Hello, and welcome back to TeaBookClub. This month, or this reading cycle rather, October-November, we're celebrating a year of TeaBookClub. A year ago, just over a year ago really, I sat in this armchair with my shelf full of tea books, and I had this idea that it would be lovely to share my love of tea and my love of reading with other people. I also realised that a lot of my shelf was sitting there unread, or I just opened it and cursorily glanced through the book. I wasn't actually reading them as fully as I wanted to. And I realised that it was one of those things that you intend to do. People buy you books, you buy your own books, but you never quite get round to it. And one of the things that for me was missing was being able to talk about the books with people and to actually share what I thought about the books and share the stories in the books and things that they brought up, questions they asked, questions they answered, and just generally to actually have that discussion. And this was a really good tea book, or oh yeah, I've read all of that before. And so that was kind of the foundation idea of TeaBookClub and why I started it. So to celebrate our 1 year anniversary, we're having a few special things going on. So we are reading 2 books this cycle. The choice is yours, which one you want to read. We're reading the classic, The Book of Tea by Okakura Kakuzo, which was actually the first book that we started TeaBookClub off with last year. So I thought this will become our annual read at this time of the year to read it. And it's something which it's an easy read, it's such a pleasant read, it's a classic, and even if you just dip into it, I find that you can reread it endlessly, and every time you read it, you get something else from it. What I got from it last year was very different to what I got from it in previous readings, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this reading brings out and which bits stick out for me. So we're reading that, and then we're also reading, as you'll have seen from my previous video, the book Cultivating Femininity, Tea Culture in Edo and Meiji Japan by Rebecca Corbett, who is also going to be joining us on Sunday the 25th of October for our social meetup, where she will be talking about the book and joining us in discussion to ask questions. So, 5-minute readings. Each week I read a little excerpt from our current read. So at the moment, because we're doing 2 books, I'm alternating one week one book, the next week the other book. So this week we are on The Book of Tea by Okakura Kakuzo. There are a multitude of editions out there. This book has been out there for over 100 years, so grab yourself a copy. If you've signed up to TeaBookClub, then in the email, the welcome email, or in the emails that I send out, you will see there is a link to read it for free online, and that's actually for one of the very early editions that you can read. One of the editions that I really like is this one, with the introduction by Bruce Richardson, who has researched and studied the life of Okakura quite extensively, and so that has a wonderful introduction to the Book of Tea and to the man behind it, what he lived through, what led him to read it, his life, all of that, and it's really, really fascinating and a great kind of add-on to actually reading the book itself. So, to the 5-minute reading. The Book of Tea by Okakura Kakuzo. This has opened itself at the chapter The Cup of Humanity. Each edition will obviously have different page numberings. In my edition, this rather gorgeous little edition, it's page 14, but if you look for the Cup of Humanity chapter, you'll find today's reading in there. Charles Lamb, a professed devotee, sounded the true note of teaism when he wrote that the greatest pleasure he knew was to do a good action by stealth, and to have it found out by accident. For teaism is the art of concealing beauty that you may discover it, of suggesting what you dare not reveal. It is the noble secret of laughing at yourself, calmly yet thoroughly, and is thus humour itself, the smile of philosophy. All genuine humourists may in this sense be called tea philosophers, Thackeray, for instance, and of course Shakespeare. The poets of the decadence, when was not the world in decadence, in their protests against materialism have, to a certain extent, also opened the way to teaism. Perhaps nowadays it is our demure contemplation of the imperfect that the West and the East can meet in mutual consolation. The Taoists relate that it was that at the great beginning of the no beginning, spirit and matter met in mortal combat. At last the Yellow Emperor, the Son of Heaven, triumphed over Shuyung, the demon of darkness and earth. The Titan, in his death agony, struck his head against the solar vault and shivered the blue dome of jade into fragments. The stars lost their nests, the moon wandered aimlessly among the wild chasms of the night. In despair the Yellow Emperor sought far and wide for the repairer of the heavens. He had not to search in vain. Out of the eastern sea rose a queen, the divine Neuka, horn-crowned and dragon-tailed, resplendent in her armour of fire. She welded the 5-coloured rainbow in her magic cauldron and rebuilt the Chinese sky. But it is also told that the Neuka forgot to fill 2 tiny crevices in the blue firmament. Thus began the dualism of love, 2 souls rolling through space and never at rest until they join together to complete the universe. Everyone has to build anew his sky of hope and peace. The heaven of modern humanity is indeed shattered in the cyclopean struggle for wealth and power. The world is groping in the shadow of egotism and vulgarity. Knowledge is brought through a bad conscience, benevolence practiced for the sake of utility. The West and East, like 2 dragons tossed in a sea of ferment, in vain strive to regain the jewel of life. We need a Neuka again to repair the grand devastation. We await the great avatar. Meanwhile, let us have a sip of tea. The afternoon glow is brightening the bamboos, the foundations are bubbling with the light, the soughing of the pines is heard in our kettle. Let us dream of effervescence and linger in the beautiful foolishness of things. So starts the next chapter, the schools of tea. Tea is a work of art and needs a master hand to bring it out its noblest qualities. We have good tea and bad tea, as we have good and bad paintings, generally the latter. There is no single recipe for making the perfect tea, as there are no rules for producing a Titian or a Cézanne. Each preparation of the leaves has its individuality, its special affinity with water and heat, its hereditary memories to recall, its own method of telling a story. The truly beautiful must be always in it. How much do we not suffer through the constant failure of society to recognize the simple and fundamental law of art and life? Lichi Hai Lai, a Sung poet, has sadly remarked that there were 3 most deplorable things in the world: the spoiling of fine youths through false education, the degradation of fine paintings through vulgar admiration, and the utter waste of fine tea through incompetent manipulation. Like art, tea has its periods and its schools. Its evolution may be roughly divided into 3 main stages: the boiled tea, the whipped tea, and the steeped tea. We moderns belong to the last school. These several methods of appreciating the beverage are indicative of the spirit of the age in which they prevailed. For life is an expression, our unconscious actions the constant betrayal of our innermost thought. Confucius said that man hideth not. Perhaps we reveal ourselves too much in small things, because we have so little of the great to conceal. The tiny incidents of daily routine are as much a commentary on racial ideals as the highest flight of philosophy or poetry. Even as the difference in favourite vintage marks the separate idiosyncrasies of different periods and nationalities of Europe, so the tea ideals characterise the various moods of Oriental culture. The cake tea which was boiled, the powdered tea which was whipped, the leaf tea which was steeped, mark the distinct emotional impulses of the Tang, the Sung, and the Ming dynasties of China. If we are inclined to borrow the much abused terminology, that's 5 minutes, of art classification, we might designate them respectively: the classic, the romantic, and the naturalistic schools of tea. There's so much to be gotten out of this book, and I hope you enjoyed that and that you will enjoy reading it and joining us to discuss it. So we will be discussing both our reads for this month at the end of November. Sign up to join TeaBookClub, teabookclub.org, or join TeaBookClub on Instagram to find out more and to get on the email so that you get the dates and times for our meetups. We will hold, as I said, a separate meetup for each of this month's reads at the end of November to discuss it. At the end of October, we will be having our social meetups. So we'll be having a birthday tea party, and we will also be having the meetup with Rebecca Corbett to discuss her book in a little bit more detail. Thank you.